Hello everyone. Before we start, make sure to like and subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment with where you're from and what time you're watching. That way, YouTube will keep showing you stories just like this one. Now, let's begin. I'm not the kind of person who usually shares stuff online, but this has been eating at me for over a year now, and I feel like I need to say something. Somewhere. Anywhere. My name's Eli Turner. I was 16 when it happened, living in Bridgeport, Oregon. It's a small, quiet place tucked between the coast and the woods, where nothing ever really happens except for our annual town fair. That year, it was on the first weekend of August, and like every summer, the fair rolled in with its rusted rides, overpriced cotton candy, and that weird mix of excitement and decay. I went with 3 friends, Jordan, Casey, and Lena. We weren't exactly a tight group, more like the kind of friends you drift toward because of proximity and boredom. We'd been wandering around the fairgrounds all afternoon, stuffing our faces, trying to win rigged games, making fun of the creepy clown cutouts near the funhouse. Just after sunset, we spotted this vintage-looking photo booth wedged between 2 food stalls. The outside was all chipped red paint and brass trim, with faded lettering that said "Memories in a Flash." It looked like something straight out of the 60s, the kind of thing you'd expect to find in a forgotten corner of a museum, not at a modern fair. Naturally, we couldn't resist. We all piled in, tight fit, smelled like dust and plastic, and took the usual set of stupid pictures. Tongues out, peace signs, all that stuff. When the strip printed out, though, something felt off. The first 3 frames were exactly what we expected. Us being idiots grinning and squishing together under the crappy booth light. But then there was a 4th photo. We all blinked at it for a second, confused. In it, we were still in the booth, same clothes, same angle, but none of us remembered taking that one. Our expressions were different. We looked stiff, almost posed, and behind us, partially hidden in the shadowy corner of the booth, there was a figure, a man. He was tall, with slicked back hair and this blank, distant look on his face. His eyes weren't even aimed at the camera, just slightly to the left, like he was watching something, or someone, outside the frame. At first, we thought it was a glitch or some kind of prank. Maybe someone photoshopped it as a joke, or the booth was rigged for scares like one of those horror attractions. But it didn't feel like a joke. Lena got quiet fast. She kept staring at the stranger's face and muttered that he looked familiar, though she couldn't place from where. Jordan tried to laugh it off, but his voice cracked. I felt this weird pressure in my chest, like the air had suddenly gotten thicker. We looked around, tried to find the guy in the crowd, but no one even remotely matched his look. And the vendor? He was this older guy with a gray beard and mirrored sunglasses, sitting behind the booth's control box. When we showed him the photo, he shrugged and said it wasn't possible. This model only prints 3 frames, he told us. Always has. We left the fair not long after that. Everyone was acting weird, quiet, distracted. I remember the photo strip crumpled in Casey's pocket, the edges damp from her sweaty hands. On the walk home, nobody really talked about it. We just split off one by one like we were trying to pretend nothing happened. But later that night, I got a text from Jordan. It was just a photo of the strip again, zoomed in on the 4th frame. "Look at his hand," he wrote. And when I did, man, I felt my stomach turn. The guy's hand wasn't resting naturally like someone squeezing into a frame. It was reaching toward Lena's shoulder, barely an inch away, fingers stiff and angled weird, like they were about to grab her but froze mid-motion. That was the moment it stopped feeling like a dumb fair gag, and more like something we weren't supposed to see. The next morning, Lena didn't show up to school. No texts, no posts, nothing. Her mom thought she'd stayed at Casey's house. Casey thought she'd gone home early. Jordan and I tried not to panic, but by lunch, teachers were already whispering. An officer came into class to talk to the principal. By the time school ended, the police were at the fairgrounds talking to vendors. That's when Casey told them about the photo. She brought it in the next day, creases all over it, but still clear enough to see that fourth frame. The cop who took it seemed skeptical until he asked where the original strip was printed. Casey pointed to the same booth, but when they checked it, something was off. The vendor, his name was Jerry or Gerald or something like that, acted like he'd never seen us before. Said a lot of people used the booth, couldn't remember every kid. But when the cop asked about the fourth frame, he got real defensive. "That machine's been in my family since '72, he said. "It's mechanical, analog. There is no fourth frame." He even opened the back to show the roll. Sure enough, it was a classic 3-frame print setup. Nothing fancy, no digital insert, no extra feed. I remember watching the officer's expression change, like he couldn't tell if we were playing a prank or if Jerry was hiding something. The whole thing had this weird energy, like everyone was suddenly aware something didn't add up, but no one knew what to do about it. By the weekend, the booth was gone. Just gone. That whole row of vendors was still there. Funnel cakes, corn dogs, cheap sunglasses. But the spot where the booth had been was empty. No tire tracks, no tarp, nothing. Jordan and I came back Saturday afternoon just to see it again, but it was like it had never been there. We asked around, but most people just shrugged or gave us blank stares. One guy even said, "Photo booth? Haven't seen one of those here in years." That didn't make sense. We'd used it less than a week ago. We even had the photo. But when we tried to show it to someone, the strip looked different. The last frame was darker now, almost overexposed. You could still see us, but the man's face was harder to make out, like it had blurred somehow or melted into the shadows. After Lena disappeared, things got bad fast. Her face was plastered all over the town, flyers taped to stop signs, school bulletin boards, even the fairgrounds fence, but no leads, no witnesses. No one had seen her leave, and her phone had gone dark that same night. Police kept circling back to us, asking about the last time we saw her, what she said, how she was acting. We told them everything, about the booth, the fourth photo, the man. But the more we insisted, the more they looked at us like we were making it all up. I could see it in their eyes, especially the detective Barlow, who kept pausing before he wrote anything down, like he was deciding whether or not it was worth the ink. A few days later, it happened again. Jordan went missing, just like that. I'd texted him the night before. He'd said he couldn't sleep, that he kept seeing the man's face every time he closed his eyes. Said he'd been dreaming about being in the booth but stuck inside it, like the door wouldn't open and the flash just kept going off, over and over. I tried to brush it off, tell him it was just stress or guilt or whatever, but when I didn't hear from him the next morning, I knew. I biked to his house. His mom said he left early for school, but he never showed up, just like Lena, gone without a trace. I brought the photo back to the police. This time, I noticed something that stopped me cold. In the fourth frame, Jordan looked different, not just posed, but scared. His eyes were wider than I remembered, like he saw something just before the flash went off, and where the stranger's hand had once hovered near Lena's shoulder, now it hovered near his. That's when I finally said it out loud to the cop. "I think it's taking us, one by one." The cop didn't respond right away. He just looked at the photo for a long time, then asked if I still had the original strip. I did. And when we compared it to the one I'd shown him just days earlier, it wasn't the same. The booth's fourth frame had changed again. This time, Jordan's face was blurred too. Casey was the last one left besides me. She wanted to get out of town, said we should go to her cousin's in Bend just for a while until things calmed down. But I couldn't leave. Something about it felt wrong, like if we ran, it would follow. Casey didn't wait. She left that night. I didn't hear from her again until 2 days later, when she called from a burner phone, whispering like she was hiding. "It's here," she kept saying. "I saw the booth. It's parked near a gas station. Same red paint, same lettering, but it wasn't plugged in. It wasn't even near power." Then the line cut. I tried calling back, but the number was dead. When I checked the frame again the next morning, Casey's smile was off. Crooked, her body angled just slightly away from the rest of us. Like she was already starting to disappear too. After Casey vanished, I stopped sleeping properly. I kept the photo strip in a drawer, taped in an envelope, but it didn't matter. I knew it was there. I could feel it, like it was humming or watching. Every night I swore I heard the faint click of a shutter somewhere in my room, like a distant camera flash with no light. I started checking mirrors, windows, even my closet before bed. Nothing helped. The fear wasn't loud, it was quiet, persistent. Like something waiting in the corner of your eye, just outside focus. I started wondering if maybe it wasn't the booth doing this. Maybe it was the picture itself. A trap, a curse. Whatever it wasn't done. Eventually, I did what most scared teenagers do when nobody believes them. I went back. It was stupid, I know that now, but part of me thought that if I could see the booth again, maybe I could stop whatever was happening. So I went to the fairgrounds at night, alone just past midnight. There was no fair anymore, just an empty lot with trampled grass and scraps of trash caught in the wind. But the booth was there, same spot, no lights, no vendor, just sitting there in the dark like it had always been waiting for me. I don't know what I thought I was going to do. Burn it, smash it, bargain with it. But I stepped inside, closed the curtain, and sat. Nothing happened at first. Then I heard the click. The first frame printed, then the second. I didn't pose, I didn't smile, I just sat still, staring at the camera. On the third flash, I felt a chill crawl down my back, like someone exhaled behind me. I turned, no one. But when the fourth frame clicked, I saw the glare of the stranger's eyes reflected faintly in the booth's glass. I bolted out, grabbed the strip, and ran home without looking back. When I checked the photo, I was alone in the first three. But in the last one, I wasn't even in the picture. Just the booth, empty, and the man standing in the center staring straight at the camera. The next day, I went to the police one last time. I gave them everything, photo, story, all of it. I don't know what convinced them, maybe the desperation in my voice, or maybe someone higher up had started connecting the dots. Because that week they reopened a cold case from 1985. Same fairground, same booth. 3 missing teens, 1 blurry photo with a 4th frame no one could explain. They said the vendor back then disappeared too. No trace. I don't know what the booth is, if it's haunted, cursed, or something worse. But since that night, it hasn't come back. Not to our town anyway. I still have the photo. I keep it locked in a metal box in the back of my closet, wrapped in cloth. I haven't looked at it in over a year. Sometimes I hear the soft sound of paper sliding inside, like another frame being added when no one's watching. I try to ignore it. I've moved twice since then, changed my number, deleted every picture I ever took with friends. But deep down, I know I'm just waiting. Not if, but when. Because I was in that 4th frame once too, and whatever it is, it doesn't forget. Not sure if this belongs here, but I've been reading stories on this forum for years, and after what happened to me and my wife last spring, I figured it was time to share. My name's Josh, I'm 33, and my wife Emily is 29. We just bought our first home together in rural Ohio, a beat-up old duplex just outside a dying little town called Mercer Hollow. It was the kind of place where people waved from porches but never made eye contact. The kind of place with more for sale signs than neighbors. We bought the duplex off a foreclosure listing. It was dirt cheap. A fixer-upper, sure, but we thought we were getting a deal. Turns out we were getting way more than that. It was a 2-story structure, nothing fancy. Vinyl siding peeling off, faded blue shutters, and a half-collapsed shed out back that smelled like wet leaves and mouse piss. But we loved it. It had potential, you know? Hardwood floors under the grime, clawfoot tubs, wide porches. Emily had dreams of painting murals in the guest room. I just wanted a place to make coffee in the mornings without hearing upstairs neighbors stomping around. The place came with a full basement, which was a huge bonus for storage. There was a locked door down there when we first moved in, but we figured it led to plumbing access or some utility panel. We didn't think much of it at first. The previous owner had died. That much we knew. An old guy named Kenneth Doyle. No family, no obituary. Just one of those people who quietly disappears into the background of a town. The realtor didn't say much, just that the property had sat vacant for a bit. We found stacks of yellowed newspapers in the attic, all dated between 2006 and 2012, and a Polaroid of a young girl with the name Cassie written on the back in shaky handwriting. Creeped us out, but we figured it was just leftover junk, part of the deal. We were so focused on the future, we didn't stop to question the past. It wasn't until our second week living there that we finally got the basement door open. I used a crowbar after I got tired of trying to find the right key. The door was solid wood, unusually heavy, with deep scratch marks around the frame, like someone had tried to pry it shut, not open. Behind it was a narrow hallway that looked nothing like the rest of the basement. The drywall gave way to concrete walls, painted black. At the end of the hall was a steel door with no handle on the outside. Just a keyhole and 5 bolts. It was completely out of place, like something out of a fallout shelter. I stared at it for a while before even trying to open it. I didn't tell Emily right away. Something about the door just felt off. That night, while she was upstairs brushing her teeth, I went back down with a flashlight and tried every key we had. None fit. Eventually, I used a drill to knock out the lock mechanism altogether. Probably stupid in hindsight, but I needed to know what was behind it. The second it popped open, a damp, metallic smell poured out. Not like mold, more like rust, sweat, and something sour. The air felt thicker inside. The room itself was about the size of a small bedroom. No windows, no light fixture. Just concrete walls, an old stained mattress in the corner, and a heavy-duty shelf bolted into the wall. That shelf is what messed me up. It had 5 glass jars sitting neatly in a row. Each one had a white label, handwritten in black marker. Lindsay, Tasha, Aaron, Mara, and Isabel. Inside each jar was something I couldn't immediately identify. One had what looked like a hair ribbon. Another had what I swear were baby teeth. Emily came downstairs halfway through me examining them, and I'll never forget the look on her face. It was like something inside her just turned cold. She didn't scream or cry. She just whispered, "This room isn't on the blueprint." We called the police that same night. I didn't want to, honestly. I felt like we were trespassing on something ancient and ugly that should have stayed buried. But Emily insisted. The deputy who showed up barely looked old enough to shave, but he called in backup the second he saw the jars. They taped off the basement, brought in a forensic team, and took everything. We had to stay in a motel for 3 days while they processed the scene. When they finally let us back in, one of the detectives, a woman named Riley, told us that one of the names matched a missing persons case from 2008. A girl named Mara Elliott, last seen walking home from school 2 towns over. She was 11. That's when everything exploded. News vans started parking across the street. Strangers knocked on our door asking if we saw ghosts or felt any evil energy. Someone even tried to sneak into the basement through the backyard window. We were suddenly the couple who lived in that house, the murder house. Or worse, the house of some sick collector, like the media started calling it. Emily stopped sleeping. She'd sit up at night scrolling through articles and missing persons databases trying to find patterns. I couldn't even step into the basement anymore without feeling like something was watching me from that 4th room. One night, about 2 weeks after the story hit the news, Emily woke me up around 2:30 in the morning. She said she heard footsteps in the basement. I told her it was probably the pipes or an animal, something rational. But when I went down there with a baseball bat, I found the steel door wide open again. I had locked it. I know I locked it. The latch was twisted open, like someone had undone it from the inside. The room was empty, but the mattress had been moved slightly, just enough to notice. and someone had placed a sixth jar on the shelf. No label, just a dried-up Band-Aid floating in what looked like cloudy water. I didn't tell Emily about that part. After that, we tried to sell the house, but no one would touch it, not even with the lowered price. The property had become infamous. Bloggers, ghost hunters, even a couple of true crime YouTubers tried to sneak onto our lawn for content. One guy from Indiana even offered to rent the place for a week just to do a ritual. Emily nearly threw her coffee at him. We felt trapped, not by the mortgage, but by this weird legacy we didn't ask for. The town stopped seeing us as neighbors and started seeing us as part of the mystery. People stared at the grocery store. Someone left a note in our mailbox that just said, "Should have stayed locked." Riley, the detective, stayed in touch for a while. She seemed genuinely disturbed by the case. She told us privately that they were testing the DNA from the jars, but that the results were inconclusive or contaminated. She said that the shelf had scratches underneath each jar's base, like they'd been moved a lot over time, carefully, repeatedly, like some kind of ritual or system. But the biggest thing she said that stuck with me? This room wasn't made to keep people out. It was built to keep someone in. That sentence still gives me chills. I think about it way too often, especially when I'm alone in the house. A month later, we made a decision. We boarded the steel door shut. We didn't talk about it. Just did it one Sunday morning with 2x4s, nails, and silence. We covered the hallway entrance with a new shelf and moved the washer and dryer to block the path. Emily said it was for our peace of mind, but I knew she didn't believe it would stop anything. Still, it helped. Things went quiet after that. No more jars, no more strange noises. Just us, in a house we no longer loved, trying to feel normal. But every now and then, when I'm in the kitchen, I swear I hear that steel door creak behind the drywall. Just once. Just enough to make me freeze. We eventually moved out. It took us 9 more months, but we found a buyer, some investor from out of state who planned to turn the duplex into rentals. We didn't say anything about the door. Legally, we disclosed what we had to. The rest, we left buried. Emily and I moved closer to her sister near Columbus. We don't really talk about Mercer Hollow anymore. It's like this silent agreement between us. She won't bring it up if I don't. But sometimes I'll wake up in the middle of the night and she'll already be awake, staring at the ceiling. We both know what we're thinking. That room, that damn room. A few weeks ago, I got an email from a random Gmail account. No subject, no message. Just a single attachment, a photo. It was a picture of the shelf. Same room, same jars. Except now there were 8. 2 new ones. The names written on the labels, Josh and Emily. The picture was taken from the corner of the room, like someone had been standing inside. I tried to trace the IP address, but it bounced through so many proxies it led nowhere. I didn't tell Emily, I just deleted it and pretended it never came. But I kept a copy. I don't know why. Sometimes I wonder what Kenneth Doyle was doing down there all those years. Whether he was just some recluse with a sick obsession or something worse. Something that didn't start with him. Something he was trying to contain. Maybe the 4th room isn't a room at all. Maybe it's a doorway, or a trap, or something that just needs names. I don't know, and I don't want to know. All I know is that place changed us. Not just how we live, but how we think. About safety, about secrets, about the things that hide in plain sight right under your feet. If anyone reading this ever finds a locked room in a house that shouldn't exist, don't open it. Whatever's behind that door isn't meant for you. And once you see it, it sees you back. I used to drive the night route for the county transit out here in Caldwell, North Carolina. Not much to it. Mostly quiet roads, small towns, and the occasional late-shift nurse or drunk college kid heading back to Lenoir. My name's Dale McCready. Back in 2016, I'd been with the Transit Authority for almost 9 years. Divorced, no kids, just me and my border collie, Riggs. I took pride in knowing every back road, every stop sign, and every one of the regulars by name or at least by face. My life was uneventful in a way I used to find comforting. That is, until the night I dropped off my last passenger just before Hollow Creek, and something I still can't explain happened. It was a Thursday, late March. You know the kind of evening where the woods seem too quiet, and the air is still holding on to winter. I remember checking my mirror after pulling out of the last legit stop, an old grocery store off Route 90, and seeing only one passenger left. His name was Walter, an elderly guy with dementia who rode the bus sometimes just to get out of the nursing home. Usually a nurse was with him, but that night he was alone. He sat 2 rows behind me, mumbling something I couldn't catch. I figured he'd pressed the call button by accident when he rang for a stop on Hollow Creek Road. Nobody gets off there. That part of the road isn't even officially on the route anymore. It used to lead to some hunting cabins, but they've been empty for years. I slowed to a stop anyway, just in case. The woods were so dense there that the bus lights barely pierced past the first row of trees. Walter didn't move at first. Then he shuffled up the aisle real slow, like he was dragging something invisible with him. I glanced at him through the rearview mirror and asked if he was sure this was his stop. He didn't respond, just stepped off and turned toward the tree line. That's when he said it. Just as I was about to close the door, I swear I heard him mutter, "They came from the trees." It made my stomach clench for some reason. I didn't even know what the hell that meant, but it stuck with me. He disappeared into the woods, and I waited a minute or two, thinking maybe he'd realize it wasn't where he meant to get off. But the guy just vanished. I called it into dispatch, let them know I was making a quick U-turn since Hollow Creek doesn't loop back to the main road. That's when the radio cut out. Total silence, not even static. It was like someone had unplugged the whole system. The bus dashboard started glitching, lights blinking, engine clicking even though it was still running. I hadn't seen another car for miles, and the road was pitch black behind me. When I looked in the side mirror, I noticed something that still haunts me. My taillights were glowing against something in the trees. Something tall. Something that wasn't there a second ago. I didn't get a clear look, but the shape was tall, narrow, and way too still to be a person. For a split second, I thought maybe it was a tree stump or just my eyes playing tricks. But then it shifted. Not like it walked. It tilted, like it was adjusting its weight almost fluidly, and then froze again. That was enough for me. I threw the bus into reverse, did a tight 3-point turn, and floored it back toward the main road. But as I was turning, I swear, I heard something hit the side of the bus, not like an animal or a branch. It sounded like fingers dragging across the metal, long ones, slow, deliberate. I didn't stop. I drove for nearly 10 minutes without seeing another car. When the radio finally came back online, it crackled like someone was whispering on the other end, but no one responded when I called for dispatch. I kept my eyes glued to the road, but something didn't feel right. You ever get that sensation like you're being followed, even if there's no headlights behind you? That's what it felt like the whole way back to the garage. I kept checking my mirrors, and every time I did, I swore I saw movement along the edge of the trees, fast, low to the ground, darting between shadows. When I finally pulled into the depot, the lot was empty, which was weird. Usually Steve or Marcy was there to do the overnight checks. I parked the bus, grabbed my logbook, and went to the break room, but it was dead silent. The clocks were blinking like there'd been a power outage. I sat there for a minute trying to calm my nerves, wrote a note to report what happened with Walter, and then locked everything up and left. That was the last time I ever sat behind the wheel of that bus, because the next morning, they found it abandoned right back on that same stretch of Hollow Creek Road. Engine cold, door open, and me gone. Only problem is, I remember driving it all the way back. I remember locking the gate behind me at the depot, but the GPS showed the route ending near that drop-off spot. Same timestamp, same location. No footage from the onboard camera, no GPS log after 8:47 p.m. And here's the kicker. Walter was found sitting at a diner 20 miles away the next morning, barefoot and covered in pine needles. He was mumbling the same thing over and over to the waitress. They came from the trees. They came from the trees. His shoes were never found. The investigation went nowhere. The transit authority pulled the logs, called in local police, even brought in some guy from Raleigh to review the data systems. All they found were conflicting entries. One that showed the bus arriving at the depot, and another showing it powering down on Hollow Creek Road. No fingerprints except mine and Walter's. No tire tracks off-road. No sign of forced entry, struggle, nothing. I tried telling them what I remembered, about the radio, the figure in the woods, the dragging sound. But after a while, I could tell they didn't believe a word. I sounded crazy, and maybe I was starting to feel that way myself. But how do you explain remembering something that never officially happened? Walter was transferred to a different facility a few weeks later. He stopped talking entirely after that. They said he had a rapid cognitive decline, couldn't even feed himself. The last thing he ever said before they moved him out was to one of the nurses, "Tell the driver not to look in the mirror." That sent chills down my spine when I heard about it. Because I had looked, and maybe I shouldn't have, I ended up quitting the transit job not long after. Couldn't get back on a bus, couldn't even stand driving past Hollow Creek, not even in broad daylight. The trees looked too still, like they were watching. For the longest time, I didn't tell anyone what really happened. The official story became that I must have had a blackout, driven the bus back subconsciously, then somehow wandered back to where the incident started. No charges, no consequences, just confusion. But here's the thing. I have this recurring dream. I'm driving the same route, but the road never ends. The trees get taller the further I go, and the radio is always silent, except for a whisper that grows louder every time. Don't stop. And the worst part? I always look in the mirror at the end of the dream. I never see myself. I don't know what's out there near Hollow Creek. I don't care if it's some kind of hallucination, some forest phenomenon, or something worse. All I know is something happened out there. Something that made time stutter and reality fold in on itself. If you ever find yourself on a road with no streetlights, no cell signal, and nothing but tall trees around you, don't stop. And whatever you do, don't look in the mirror. I don't usually talk about this. It's one of those stories that makes people either look at you like you're crazy or try to explain it away with something that sounds comforting but doesn't make sense. My name's Mallory Grant. I was living in Nashville when it happened, working freelance gigs and trying to scrape enough together for rent. My older sister, Paige, had moved back to our hometown in West Virginia a few months earlier. We weren't talking every day, but we were close. Closer than most, especially after our mom died. She was the kind of sister who always knew when to check in. Then one day, she just didn't. It was late July, brutally hot. I remember because the AC in my car gave out on the drive back to Clifton. That drive was the start of everything. Clifton's a quiet town tucked between low mountains and half-forgotten roads, and the further you get from the highway, the more it starts to feel like the rest of the world gave up on it. I hadn't been back in almost 5 years. Nothing had really changed, but something felt different the second I crossed the town line. Not visibly, just in the way people looked at you from porches, the silence in places that used to be noisy, and the quarry. It was like even the trees leaned away from it. Paige had supposedly gone hiking alone the day she disappeared. No note, no text, just a voicemail I didn't hear until hours later. "Hey, I think I found something weird out here." Then static. That was it. The official report said it was a tragic accident. The terrain around Clifton Quarry is rough and unmaintained, and they said she probably slipped, drowned. But there was no body, just her phone, found cracked at the edge of the woods, and a single shoe. I remember holding it in the station like it would somehow explain things. The cops kept saying closure, like repeating it would make me feel it. I stayed in Clifton that week. I asked around. Friends, old teachers, even the guy who used to run the gas station. Every single one of them said the same thing. Paige shouldn't have been up there. No one would explain why. One woman, Mrs. Dorsey, she used to bake pies for church on Sundays. She looked like she wanted to say something more. I'll never forget how she held my hand and whispered, "Just let her rest now." Then she crossed herself and walked off like we were standing at a gravesite. But Paige didn't have a grave. She wasn't dead. I could feel that, like some thread between us hadn't snapped yet. I didn't go back to Nashville, I stayed. I rented a short-term room above the old post office. It smelled like dust and mothballs, but it was cheap, and I needed to be close. Every day I'd drive out to the edge of the woods near the quarry, park, and walk the same path they said Paige took. It wasn't marked anymore, overgrown in places like nature had been trying to erase it. I brought a flashlight, a journal, water, and the voicemail saved on my phone. I don't know why. Maybe I thought I'd hear something new if I listened to it out there. The static always came at the exact same spot on the trail. Always. A few days in, I found something. Not what I was looking for, not Paige, but something. It was a photo wedged into a crack in a boulder near the eastern ridge of the quarry. It had curled edges and sun-bleached faces, 4 people posing in front of the same cliff where they said my sister disappeared. I didn't recognize them, but on the back someone had scribbled a year, 1993, and below that, in faded ink, "Don't come back." I took it straight to the sheriff's office, thinking maybe it was connected somehow. He barely looked at it before sliding it into a drawer and muttering, "Old prank. Locals like to scare hikers." But there was something in his face, a flicker of recognition he tried to bury under indifference. That night, I couldn't sleep. I just kept thinking about the photo, about how it looked like it had been placed there recently, not just dropped decades ago. Around 3 a.m., I started rereading articles from the local archives. That's when I noticed something odd. Paige wasn't the first person to go missing near that quarry. There were others. I found 3 names from the same summer: Jack Redfield, Alyssa Lang, and Brent Waters. All hikers. All gone without a trace. Not a single one had a follow-up article. Just a mention in the police blotter and then nothing. Like the town had scrubbed them away. And when I brought it up the next day at the diner, the waitress froze for a second and then said, "People get lost in the woods all the time." But she couldn't look me in the eye. So I went back to the spot where I found the photo. I searched for hours. That part of the trail always felt colder, even on those 90-degree days. The air was heavier, like breathing through wet cloth. Just past the ridge, there was a strange formation carved into the rock. 3 intersecting circles with jagged lines running through them. It didn't look natural. I brushed away the dirt and saw other markings too. Words maybe, but they were worn down. I took pictures, even tried sketching it, and then I heard it. Footsteps behind me, soft but steady. I turned fast. No one. Nothing. But the feeling didn't go away. You know that prickling sense that someone's watching you? It was like that, times 10. I left fast, almost twisted my ankle on the way down. The next morning, I woke up to find my car had been keyed. Not just scratched, but carved into. Deep, angry slashes across the doors. And on the back window, someone had etched the same symbol I saw on the rock. Those 3 intersecting circles. I reported it, of course, but the officer who came out barely pretended to take notes. When I mentioned the symbol, he stopped writing entirely. Just said, "Best not to stir things up, Miss Grant. People don't like outsiders poking around old wounds." I wanted to scream at him. I wasn't some outsider. My sister lived here. We grew up here. But in that moment, I realized something. They'd already decided she was gone. And I was next if I didn't back off. Still, I couldn't. I started knocking on doors again, this time with the names of the other missing hikers. Most people pretended not to know them, but a guy named Eli, he worked part-time at the local scrapyard, finally cracked. He said he remembered Jack Redfield, said he was dating a girl from town that summer, and they used to hang around the quarry at night. One day Jack just vanished and the girl's family moved away a week later. Town called it a bear attack, he told me, but everyone knew that was bullshit. There's something in those woods, Mallory. something that doesn't want to be found. He wouldn't say more after that, just kept looking over his shoulder like someone might be listening. The next day, I went one last time. I don't even know why. Maybe I thought I'd find a piece of Paige's necklace or hear her voice again. I brought a shovel, thinking I'd dig near the spot with the carvings. Instead, I found a hole already there. Not fresh, but recent enough that the dirt was loose and uneven. Inside was a small box wrapped in cloth. It held 3 things: a lock of blonde hair tied with red thread, a rusted compass, and another photo. This one had Paige in it. She was standing in front of the quarry looking off to the side, like someone had called her name at the last second. On the back, the same handwriting. She saw too much. That's when I ran. I didn't look back. I left Clifton the next morning, packed everything, and drove straight through the night back to Nashville. I didn't tell anyone, didn't call the sheriff. I kept the photo, though. It's in a locked drawer in my apartment, and sometimes I take it out just to remind myself that it was real. Paige is still listed as missing. No remains, no new evidence. Just a sister who went out for a hike and never came back. And every once in a while I dream about those woods, about the quarry. I see her there, standing at the edge, facing the trees. I want to scream for her to turn around, but she never does. She just steps forward. And I wake up before she falls. I'm Sarah Whitman. I've lived in Pine Hollow, Alabama my whole life. It's one of those towns where everybody knows everybody, and the loudest thing on a weekday morning is the hum of lawnmowers or the clinking of coffee cups down at Ruby's Diner. I've been teaching 9th grade English at Pine Hollow High for the last 11 years. Nothing fancy, just literature, grammar, and the occasional pep talk to a kid who doesn't think he's smart enough. I rent a modest house 3 blocks from the school, I drive a '99 Toyota Corolla, and I have a cat named Milo who only likes me when he's hungry. That's the pace my life's always moved at. Slow, predictable, quiet. Or at least it was. The morning it started, everything felt normal. It was late March, still chilly enough to need a jacket before the sun fully came out. I got to school around 6:45 a.m. like I always do, coffee in hand, ready to prep for my first period. But something was off. The front office was strangely quiet. The secretary, Brenda, usually chirpy and borderline nosy, just looked pale and distracted. "Did you hear?" she asked me, barely above a whisper. "Mr. Barlow died last night." I blinked. "Wait, Ray? The janitor?" She nodded, eyes welling up. I didn't know what to say. Ray Barlow had worked at the school longer than I'd been alive. Quiet guy. Old. Always wore a green utility jumpsuit that looked 2 sizes too big. I used to joke that he'd been at the school since the brick was laid. I was shocked but not devastated. Ray had to be in his 70s, and the man smoked like it was still legal indoors. Brenda said it was a heart attack. Died in his little break room behind the gym sometime overnight. The principal found him that morning when he didn't clock in. They'd already called his next of kin and sent someone to clean out his things. It felt strange how fast everything was moving. Life goes on, I guess. I went about my day, taught my classes, collected essays on To Kill a Mockingbird, and sat through a faculty meeting that felt longer than the actual school day. But then something happened that I still can't explain. That afternoon, around 4 p.m., I was in the teacher's lounge grading papers when I saw a small cardboard box sitting on the table with a sticky note that said, "Barlow's stuff." Someone must have dumped his locker contents there for sorting. Curious, I started going through it. Most of it was junk. Old pens, keys, 2 crushed packs of Marlboros, a rusty thermos that smelled like soup, and a small, spiral-bound notebook with a black cover. The kind you get in bulk at Walmart for $1. I almost left it there, but something made me flip it open. Inside were pages and pages of names, just first and last names, all handwritten in neat capital letters, 1 per line. Next to most of them were dates. Some had single words scribbled beside them. Accident, gone, lost. I didn't recognize most of the names, but then I turned to a page in the middle. My eyes locked on it immediately. My name. Sarah Whitman. Written clearly, just like the others. And next to it, just one word. Next. I just froze. For a second, I couldn't even breathe. I stared at the page like maybe I'd misread it, maybe it was some other Sarah Whitman, but there was no mistaking it. My name was there, in blocky letters. No smudges, no hesitation. And next, in all caps. I kept flipping through the pages, trying to find some kind of pattern. The names before mine, Travis Holman, Denise Kerr, Miles Bradley, all had dates and vague words beside them. I recognized Denise's name. She died in a car crash 2 years ago on Highway 12. Travis? I remembered he slipped off his roof while cleaning gutters. Miles? I wasn't sure, but I vaguely recalled something about him disappearing during a hunting trip. The more I looked, the more it felt like this wasn't just a random list. It was a damn countdown. I wanted to believe it was some kind of joke, a weird, twisted prank by a lonely old man who maybe lost touch with reality. But Ray Barlow never struck me as senile. He was quiet, sure, but sharp. He'd fix a busted locker with a bent paperclip and a lighter. He remembered everyone's birthdays without needing a calendar, and he'd always nod at me in the halls like he knew something I didn't. I closed the notebook and sat there for what felt like an hour. My hands were shaking. I kept glancing around the lounge, half expecting someone to pop out and laugh. Gotcha. But no one came. The building was nearly empty, echoey, and cold. I shoved the notebook into my tote bag and left without saying goodbye to anyone. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I took the notebook to the sheriff's office. Sheriff Maddox is one of those guys who looks like he was carved out of red clay. Square jaw, thick neck, always smells faintly of barbecue. He didn't laugh when I showed him the notebook, but I could tell he was trying hard not to roll his eyes. He thumbed through it slowly, then looked up at me. You're saying this old janitor had a list of names and all these people are dead? I nodded. And yours says next. Another nod. You think he was planning something? I didn't know what to say. That's what I was hoping they'd tell me. But instead of answers, Maddox just sighed, told me they'd look into it, and asked if I wanted to file a formal report. I said yes. I didn't leave until he promised to run the names. I should have felt better after that, but I didn't. If anything, the fear got worse. That night, I started noticing things, weird things, like how my porch light kept flickering even after I replaced the bulb, or how my cat Milo wouldn't go near the living room window. He'd just sit at the doorway and growl, low and guttural, like something was outside. I laughed it off at first. Stress, right? A creepy notebook and a few coincidences don't mean anything. But then I started getting calls on my landline. Dead air every time. No one ever spoke. And when I'd hang up, it would ring again 30 seconds later. Always 30 seconds. I started keeping track. I stopped answering eventually, but that didn't stop the ringing. By the third day, I started locking every door, every window, even during the day. I was jumping at my own reflection. At school, I felt eyes on me constantly, even when the halls were empty. One of my students, a quiet girl named Hannah Pierce, asked if I was okay. I must have looked like hell. I told her I was just tired. But the truth is, I hadn't slept more than 2 hours straight since I found the notebook. Every creak in the house, every gust of wind made my heart skip. And the worst part? Sheriff Maddox stopped returning my calls. When I went back to the station, the deputy said he was out sick and that someone would be in touch. No one ever was. It felt like the whole town had turned into this slow, crawling thing, like it knew something I didn't. That Friday, I came home from work and found my front door slightly open. I knew I had locked it that morning. I always check it twice, it's a habit. I didn't go in. I backed away, heart pounding so hard it made my ears ring. Called the police from my car. When they arrived, they did a quick sweep and said nothing looked disturbed. But I noticed something missing. The notebook. I had hidden it in my bedroom closet inside an old boot box under a pile of winter coats. I checked. Gone. I asked the officers if they took it. thinking maybe Maddox had finally decided to take it seriously. But they didn't even know what I was talking about. One of them actually laughed and said, "Maybe the ghost of Barlow came back for it." I felt like I was losing it. That night, I stayed at a friend's place. Maggie, another teacher who didn't ask too many questions. I didn't tell her everything, just enough to make it sound like a break-in. She offered me wine, let me sleep on her couch. But around 2:30 in the morning, I woke up to this metallic tapping sound. Not loud, more like someone slowly clicking a coin against a piece of glass. It was coming from the living room window. Maggie lives on the second floor of an old duplex. I sat up slowly, heart racing, and I swear to God, I saw the outline of a man outside her window. Just standing there, head tilted slightly like he was listening. There was no ledge, no balcony, just him, somehow there. When I turned the light on, he was gone. That was my breaking point. I told Maggie everything the next morning. To my surprise, she didn't laugh. She looked terrified. She told me, hesitantly, that she remembered hearing a story years ago about a student who went missing after Ray Barlow warned him to stay away from the woods behind the school. No one ever found the kid. People said Barlow was odd, but maybe he knew things. Maybe he saw patterns, or maybe he made them happen. Maggie didn't say that out loud, but I could see it written all over her face. I told her I didn't care what it meant anymore. I just wanted out. The next day, I packed up my essentials, took a leave of absence from school, and drove to stay with my brother up in Tennessee. I didn't tell anyone where I was going, not even Maggie. I turned off my phone, deleted social media, and tried to disappear for a while. And for a while it worked. No more tapping on windows, no more phone calls, no one watching me in the hallways. It was like the shadow that had crawled into my life just lifted. I stayed away for 2 full weeks, and when I finally came back to Pine Hollow, just to grab the rest of my things, I found a letter taped to my front door. No envelope, just a single sheet of paper. My name written in all caps at the top and below it one word: cleared. That's when I realized it was never about being killed or hunted. It was about being watched, judged maybe. Like some invisible system was deciding who stayed and who disappeared. Whatever the notebook was, it wasn't just a list. It was a process, a filter. I don't know why I was spared. Maybe because I ran. Maybe because I told someone. Or maybe because the notebook was taken before anything could happen. I don't have answers, just scars I can't show anyone and a fear that never fully leaves. I don't teach at Pine Hollow anymore. I moved to a different district, started fresh, new town, new apartment. But sometimes late at night I swear I hear a slow tapping on my window again. I was 10 years old when my brother Josh disappeared. We lived in a small town in Vermont called Alders Hollow. Population barely over 1,000, the kind of place where everyone waves to everyone else whether they know you or not. It was late October of 2009, right when the air starts getting sharp and the leaves coat every inch of the ground in this crunchy, copper-colored mess. Josh was 12, 2 years older than me, and we walked home from school together almost every day. There was this trail through the woods behind the old textile mill on Alder Creek Road, a shortcut we used all the time. Everyone used it. It was faster than going through town and just creepy enough to make it feel like an adventure when you were a kid. The mill had been abandoned for as long as I could remember. Half its roof collapsed, windows busted out, the whole structure leaning like it might give in with the next good snowstorm. People said it had shut down in the 70s after some kind of accident, but no one ever really talked about it. Still, it wasn't fenced off or anything. It was just there. A hulking, rotting thing with ivy crawling up its walls and rusted pipes that groaned in the wind. Josh used to joke that it looked like a monster with its mouth half open. We'd pass it every day, and every day we'd dare each other to peek inside one of the busted windows, even though we never actually did. The Thursday started like any other. We had science quizzes that morning. and Josh spent lunch trading hot Cheetos for answers. He always had this cocky grin like nothing could touch him. After school, we cut through the back path as usual. It had rained earlier that week, so the dirt trail was a little soft, and the leaves were matted to the ground. I remember Josh walking ahead, stepping on a branch that made this loud snap. Louder than usual, like it echoed somehow. I slowed down to tie my shoe. When I looked up, he was gone. Just gone, like he'd vanished mid-step. At first, I thought he was messing with me. That was something he'd do. Hide behind a tree, jump out and scare me, then laugh about it all the way home. So I called his name a few times, louder each time. Nothing. No footsteps, no rustling. The air felt off, still. I didn't know what that meant back then. I just knew something was wrong. I stood there for maybe a minute scanning the trees, until I noticed something further ahead, a dark patch near the foundation of the mill. It wasn't moving, but it wasn't part of the building either. I took a few steps forward, and that's when I saw it. Josh's backpack ripped open down the side with his science book and half a sandwich lying next to it in the mud. I froze. I didn't even think about grabbing the backpack. My brain just kind of stopped. I remember the weirdest detail. His sandwich was barely touched, but there were these little rips in the plastic bag like it had been clawed open, not torn by a person. I didn't see any blood, no footprints, no sign of a struggle. Just this awful silence. I turned to run, but my legs felt heavy like I was trying to move underwater. Every sound, the crunch of my steps, the creak of the trees, sounded way too loud. I finally made it back home, breathless, and all I could do was stand there in the doorway, staring at my mom while she kept asking, "Where's your brother? Where's Josh?" I couldn't answer. Something had broken in me the moment I saw that backpack. I didn't sleep that night. Cops came. Then the search dogs, then more cops. They scoured the woods behind the mill for days. Helicopters, volunteers, even kids from school showed up with flashlights and gear. Nothing. Not a single piece of clothing. Not a drop of blood. The only other thing they found was some old rusted key buried in the dirt near where I saw the backpack. No one knew what it opened. It looked ancient, like something you'd find in a museum or stuck in the back of your grandpa's junk drawer. The cops didn't know what to make of me. I wouldn't talk. I couldn't. I just kept staring at the floor, tracing the grooves in the wood over and over with my finger, like it would distract my brain from what I saw. Therapists tried. Teachers gave me passes. I got pulled from school for a while. Everyone thought it was trauma. And maybe it was, but the truth is I wasn't just scared. I was afraid to say what I'd really seen after I found the backpack. Because I did see something. I just don't know if anyone would believe me, even now. Right before I ran, I caught a glimpse of something through one of the broken windows of the mill. It was small, too small to be a person, but tall enough to stand upright. Its skin looked wrong, like old paper left out in the rain, and its eyes didn't blink. They just stared. Huge, glassy, unmoving. I remember thinking it looked like a doll that someone had tried to bury and then dug back up. And I swear, just before I turned to run, it smiled. Not a human smile. Something crooked. Like it didn't know how to do it right. That was the last thing I saw before everything went black in my head. After that day, I wouldn't go near the woods again. Even when I started speaking again a few months later, I never told anyone what I saw. Not my mom, not the cops, not even the shrink they sent me to. I didn't know how to explain it without sounding insane. It took me years to stop flinching every time I passed a window after dark. My mom eventually moved us to Montpelier to be closer to her sister. She couldn't bear staying in Alders Hollow. Not with the empty bedroom. Not with the way the neighbors stopped asking about Josh after the first year. But here's the thing. Josh wasn't the first kid to go missing behind that mill. Not really. Years later, when I was in high school and finally had the guts to look things up, I found mentions of a boy named Eli Morton, who vanished in 1974. Same age as Josh. Same shortcut. No body, no answers. Just a local article about the search and a single line from the sheriff back then that gave me chills. We found a key. That's all we found. After that, I started digging deeper. Turns out there were 5 other cases over the years. All boys, all between 10 and 13, all gone without a trace, always near the mill. That's when I realized something had been happening in that spot for decades, and nobody talked about it. The grown-ups in Alders Hollow had turned it into some old bedtime legend. Don't play near the mill, they'd say. But it was real. Something was there, and whatever it was, it wanted kids. I think that's why I saw it. It didn't want me, not yet. I was the younger brother. I was supposed to come back and remember. 2 years ago, I went back. I don't know why. I think I needed to see it again, to prove to myself that it was just a rotting building and nothing more. The mill was still there, only worse. Part of it had collapsed completely, but the windows were still there. Same busted glass, same angle. And I swear to you, I didn't even get 10 feet from the place before I heard it. A soft scraping, like nails against wood. I didn't stick around to see what it was. I turned and left, and I'm never going back again. I don't know what that key was for, or what that thing inside the mill really was. All I know is something took my brother and it's still there, waiting for the next kid who strays too close. I don't care if no one believes me. I'm writing this because if anyone in Vermont reads this and lives anywhere near Alder Creek Road, don't take the shortcut. Please, just don't. I've lived in Elridge, Kansas my whole life. It's one of those places you can drive through in under 10 minutes and not even realize you passed a town. I'm 38 now, work nights as a cook at the only diner in town, Stella's. It's been around forever, passed down through 3 generations, and we all know each other by name. Nothing big ever happens here, or at least, nothing we talk about out loud. That day started like any other. Slow breakfast rush, same 3 old-timers arguing over the jukebox, and me back in the kitchen grilling sausage links like I've done 1,000 times before. Around 8:45 that morning, I stepped out to grab more eggs from the storage out back. When I came in, there she was. This girl I'd never seen before, standing behind the counter wearing one of our uniforms. Slim build, pale skin, long dark brown hair tied back with a green ribbon. She looked like she belonged in an old photo. Something about her face felt dated, I guess. Not ugly, not strange, just like she wasn't from this decade. I figured maybe she was a new hire Stella brought in to help during the weekend shift. But Stella wasn't working that day, and nobody had mentioned anything about hiring. The girl smiled at me like we'd met before. "Morning," she said, setting down a glass tip jar near the register. I nodded back and went about my morning, but something about that jar tugged at my attention. It wasn't the usual tips label. This one had a paper taped to it that read, "For local families in need," with a list of names written neatly underneath in black ink. At first, I didn't give it much thought. People around here have big hearts, and we've had our share of hard times. But later, during the lunch shift, one of the regulars, Jim Carrigan, squinted at the jar and muttered, "Ain't that something? I know that name. And that one, too." Jim's an ex-mailman. He knows this town better than Google Maps. He leaned closer, then picked the jar up and said, "These people, they're all dead." That made me stop what I was doing. "You sure?" I asked, half laughing. But he wasn't joking. One by one, he started naming off how they died. A house fire on Hollow Creek. A car that veered off the old quarry road. A kid who vanished and was found months later by the riverbank. And yeah, I recognized the names too. Not all at once, but once you heard them out loud, something clicked. The weird thing was, these weren't just dead townsfolk. They were the kind of deaths that left everyone uneasy. Stuff people whispered about but never fully explained. I walked over to the counter and picked up the jar myself. The names were written in perfect cursive, like the kind they taught in schools back in the 60s. I asked the girl, because no one ever introduced her by name, where she got the list. She didn't look up from refilling a coffee cup, just smiled and said, "From the town registry. I wanted to make sure I honored the right people." I remember the way she said honored, like it wasn't about helping families at all, but remembering the dead. I pressed a little more, asked which registry exactly, and she shrugged like it wasn't important. "Old one I found at the library," she said. "Thing is, our library burned down 3 years ago. We never rebuilt." By mid-afternoon, word had spread across the diner. Folks started coming in just to look at the jar. Some got real quiet when they saw the names. Others got angry. One woman, Cheryl Barnes, said her cousin's name was on there, and he died in 2016, in a crash everyone around here still swears didn't make sense. She asked the girl, point blank, why she'd put his name on it. The girl just said he needed to be remembered. That's when I realized I still didn't know her name. Nobody did. Not even Linda, our shift manager, who's been working the books for over 20 years. She checked the log and found nothing. No application, no background check, no signed W-4. It was like the girl just appeared in the building. Linda got spooked enough to call Stella at home. I heard her on the phone in the back office, whispering like the girl might overhear her. I was standing near the kitchen door when Linda came back out, pale as drywall. She didn't say much, just walked over to the girl and asked where she lived. The girl smiled again, always that same polite, wrong-era smile, and said, "I don't stay in one place long." Then she calmly went back to wiping down the counter. That whole moment was off. Like she wasn't scared to be confronted, like she'd expected it. Around closing time, things got even weirder. I stayed late to help clean, and when I came out of the kitchen around 9:30, the jar was gone. Just gone. No sign of it, and no sign of the girl either. Her apron was draped over the back of a stool, folded too neatly, like someone wanted to leave everything just right. Linda checked the cameras the next morning, but the footage from that entire night was corrupted. Just static. I've worked at Stella's for 17 years. That's never happened before. And no one, I mean no one, ever saw her again. The following morning, the whole town was buzzing. Someone called the local paper, but they didn't print anything. Too sensitive, they said. A few people tried asking around to see if maybe she was related to anyone here, but nobody recognized her. Linda even took a copy of the employee schedule down to the sheriff's office. Deputy McCoy looked it over and said flat out, "This girl was never hired. We don't even have her name on file anywhere." And just like that, it was like she'd never existed. No trace, no name, no paper trail. Just a weird memory and a jar full of names that shouldn't have been known. About a week later, something else happened that stuck with me. Jim, the old mailman, came by again, quiet this time. He said he couldn't stop thinking about the list, and he'd started writing the names down from memory. Said he made it to 13 before he had to stop because he realized something. They were all people who died on the same exact day of the month, every one of them, the 17th. Different years, different causes, but always the 17th. And we checked. He was right. I've never seen Jim look rattled like that before. I wish I could say we got answers, that she came back or someone figured out who she was. But we never did. Some folks think it was a prank. Some think it was a messed up coincidence. But me? I don't know. There was something about her that didn't feel like someone playing a joke. The way she talked, the way she moved. It was like watching someone who had already done it all before. Like she'd been in that diner 100 times, in 100 other towns doing the same thing. Like it was a ritual. I don't work at Stella's anymore. I left that job about 4 months after it all happened. But sometimes, when I'm passing through some small town on the highway, and I see a little diner, I catch myself glancing through the window, half expecting to see her behind the counter, folding napkins or pouring coffee with that same calm smile. And I wonder, if I walked in, would she remember me too?